this topic of the final overcoming of depressive elements in us is crucial, is required in every single person's life who has come into this world and decided that they're living as a bodily being, as a human being. Automatically it depresses you. Automatically. Because you have lost the awareness of yourself as a loving being. And in its place you must now substitute, in that absence, something which makes you feel safe and which makes you feel cared for. And so you will reach for people to be able to fulfill your desire to have belongingness. You, though unfortunately, have become needy, and you are demanding of other people that they live for you, and that they make you feel good, and you're not interested at that point in making another person feel good unless you can get the guarantee that they in turn going to make you feel good, and even better than good, since you might be leading the quest for feeling good. Can't be done. And therefore, depression is the belief in the unworthiness of oneself, or I'll even say the experience of unworthiness within ourself, and for which has no answer that can truly help. That's depression, that there is no help for this answer of feeling that you are this troubled person, this inadequate, this loss of self-esteem person, this loss of worthiness person, floating through this world, unable to find an answer to it, and believing that this is the essence of you. This is what depression is. The feeling of the unworthiness, the feeling of the loneliness that it brings, and not being able to see the answer to it. This feeling needs to be solved if one is to become healed and is to become a healer. I call it the final depression, in that you can clear away certain aspects that you can see that the feelings of unworthiness, etc., are lessened when God has been able to teach you to become aware of the divine nature. That comes first, that you become aware of this divine nature as God sheds away all of the interference that convinces you of this unworthiness, and which enables you to feel this healing inside yourself, that there's something worthy about yourself, and also to know that it can exist in others. But what it doesn't do away from is your human mind's constant attacks on you. And it's from there that this depressive feeling keeps coming at you. You don't believe it when you're in the divine mind, but the human mind knows how to get you, and comes after you, and comes after you for any and every opening to be able to deal with you. We see it as well with Jesus. Even Jesus had his depressive moments. We know that he called the Pharisees and Sadducees hypocrites and attacked them, and yet it's Jesus' statement that we are to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. But the depressive element of his human mind was still there, and made him an attacker at times of other people. The other very sad element, very, very painful one, in which I've talked about in other of our YouTube Healing Aspirations segments, is the story of the Canaanite woman who came to Jesus and asked for healing of her daughter. And Jesus said to her, I came to heal the children of Israel, not their dogs. The Canaanites were the enemies of Israel. This is the depression. What you feel about another person means you feel about that yourself. And so you see those elements when he whips the people in temple who are selling animals in order to be sacrificed, and he attacks them. You're seeing the depressive element with Jesus. Yet, bit by bit, these things were being withdrawn by his other statements to love others as I have loved you, and his statements again that love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you see healing elements taking place. But now Jesus is down to the last day, and he's on the cross. And what we're suddenly seeing after his being on that cross for 3 hours is that he turns to God and he says, "Why have you forsaken me?" Jesus felt forsaken. Jesus was depressed. There is within inside of ourself that holding on to these last depressive feelings which are coming from the human mind that God doesn't destroy, because the human mind was our choice to be this human mind. God doesn't destroy it. God constantly deals with it by countering its statements, by reminding you, look, you can believe that stuff that the human mind is telling you, you can bring it back to me. And God gets us back because we don't like what we're feeling. Jesus, at these last moments, now states to his Father, "Why have you forsaken me?" That why, if it wasn't given to him, he couldn't get at this last element of depression. The why opened up an area of discourse with his Father. Why? Tell me why you have, Jesus states, you have forsaken me. Why have you forsaken me? He believes forsaken. Depression. Depression. We now see what haunts every single human being who comes into this world. The depressed feeling of the absence of God, of the denial of God, of our turning away from God, and therefore feelings of uneasiness, just like Adam and Eve in the garden when they decided to chomp on the apple. First thing they did was they hid from God. Guilt, depression, criticism of themselves, and when they see God and they now hide from him. Depression. You see it in Jesus, and it is present in each and every one of us, including me. I also have these feelings that can come upon me. With all the work of my 81 years and 11 months that have gone into this, there are times when I feel this depressed feeling upon me, and I need to be able to turn to God, and God enables it. Lord, there it is again. And my prayer at that time is, Lord, I want you as me. I want to do away with that depressed feeling. I want you as me. And the other part of the prayer that I use, make me useful. I want you as me. Goodbye, Robert. And hello to Robert, who is the God Robert in me. I want that, and make me useful. And this is what resolves that final depression, that God must get you to that point of handing over these feelings. And Jesus finally is able to do it, because we see his final words, "It is finished." It is finished. And immediately after that he states, "Unto you I commend my spirit." What happened that this is said? Number one, that Jesus realizes he was mistaken about the belief that God had forsaken him. Otherwise, he now believes that hasn't happened. So he can turn to God safely to be able to let God do with him as is necessary. And the other aspect of it is that God has seen, that Jesus has seen that he is of worth, that it is done, that he has completed his job, The fulfillment was there. His belief that God had forsaken him for some negative reason that he was holding on to wasn't true. And he let go. And after 3 hours of what I say was needless suffering caused by that lousy human mind that was killing him, hung him on that cross until Jesus could get that feeling cleared out of him that he had possibly done something wrong. And he couldn't let go of it until God helped him with that final moment of the depressive human mind, when at last God got his mind open to ask him why that he had been forsaken. Notice Jesus didn't say to God at that point when he felt forsaken, "Oh, I'm only kidding, God, really, I'm kidding." He didn't say it. He felt abandoned. "Why have you forsaken me? You have forsaken me." But the inch that God got out of him was the why. And that enabled God now to move on Jesus in that final moment of depression, because Jesus now was not holding on to human life anymore, was not holding on to his fear that he had been unworthy in some way and deserved that God should forsake him. Jesus now had been delivered to him the ability to know it was an error. Unto you I commend my spirit, and thank God, thank God, thank God. God could get Jesus out of this world and off that cross. His job was done. You're going that direction also, that final depressed feeling, which will be there right till the end. You're going to get wise to it, and you're going to turn to God and ask God, let me see this only from you, and it'll be shown to you. And you're relieved to let go and let God bring you back home again to your ideal state of the godly being that you are and the loved godly being that you are. Amen. I've been asked at times when talking or discussing the fact that I become aware of God's presence, or I hear God giving me advice, that people say, how do you know that it's really God? How do you know that it's not someone else, maybe the devil or your human mind? And it's good that this is asked, because indeed there are times that I have been faked out by my human mind. And I'll give an example of it to you, and how I'm learning to be able to deal with this. My family had talked about the fact that they wanted me to move into a different circumstance with my family as we got older, because of the present house not being a one-level ranch house and the difficulty of getting around on stairs, etc. And they spoke of it often, and I suddenly hear said to me one day, "Move." And I'm startled. And because of this being an active discussion amongst us, I took it for granted that this was God giving me instruction. Move. And I accepted this, and I said to it, when? Now. And that instituted a search for new housing for our family setup. And eventually we found a house, although I must say I was never comfortable with the search, but didn't know it, but just accepted the fact that I knew that in future years that the care of my son was a crucial kind of thing, and the people that would be caring for him. And this enabled me to go forward with it, and putting aside my feelings that something's not right. And we even get to the point where we submitted a bid to the bank of for whatever it was that they wanted for the house. And the bid failed, and the bank was suspicious of why I wanted this house in a time when there were difficulties even of selling houses. and they turned it aside because an error had been made on the side of the sellers, which caused the bank to believe circumstances were different than what they actually were, and they turned me down. And that made me suspicious. And I turned to God and I said to God, was that you who said move? Now, for the first time, I turned to God at that point and heard the answer, no, it was not God. I did not check it out and made room for the human mind to play with me. But the human mind could not accomplish what it wanted, to do something that would have been essentially negative in moving me into circumstances which were not right and proper. Although there were some favorable elements, it was not right and proper. But the human mind didn't care about that. It just wanted to get into position, I'm the boss again, and did this. Now, I got faked out. And there have been other times that suddenly I hear the human mind, not knowing at that point, saying something to me when I have prayed and I'm seeking guidance, and suddenly in comes the human mind. Or another example of it is that I pray for my radio broadcasts and I ask God for guidance on what does He want me to accomplish. And God uses the footladder of Notes Divine as the source of my broadcast. Now, the footladder of Notes Divine you find on my website, ChristianLaityFoundation.org. You find it there. It is this now 16-year compilation of dictations from God that forms this healing curriculum. And God will give me the number that He wants me to use for the radio broadcast. Well, what does my human mind do the minute I turn to God and say, I ask your help now for the broadcast? 712, 412, whatever it is. My human mind rushes in with it in order to get me to listen to it. And I'll look and turn the page to it, and I know this wasn't meant for a broadcast. But the human mind keeps doing it. And to get around it, I turn to God and say, look, Lord, you know how to be able to get to that place inside me where I know this is coming from you. I must depend on that. And eventually, sure enough, the answer comes unexpectedly, and I hear the number and look at it and I realize, yes, that's for the broadcast. Likewise, with the house incident, I now know that I need to be able to check out with God whether or not this is God giving an answer or not. And my own way of doing it is that I go to God and say, Lord, is this what you want me to do? And this is my checking way. I feel within inside me one of two kinds of feelings. If something draws close and down and tight inside me, that's the statement by God, this is not of me. If there is an opening and a release of what is inside me, that I just feel free. If I'm going to follow this instruction, I know that's of God, and the human mind can't produce that feeling inside me. Hasn't got the slightest idea of how to do it, because it is a mindset that is within the divine, and the openness is not within the human mind. I pass this on to you because all of us, in one way or another, indeed, can be faked out, because the human mind goes at it. God doesn't destroy the human mind, He counters it. And so the mind is always waiting around for some kind of possibility to get in there and become the dominant force. But I have found my way of checking these things out. And I offer this to you because God knows how to be able to make you aware of checkout time as well with God. And I hope that this is helpful. Don't eat yourself up over the fact that you can be faked out. There's nothing wrong with you. It is God who teaches us how to be able to distinguish what is God's business and what is not. And that God knows also how to be able to counteract, even if you follow that human voice because you didn't know that it was so. God knows how to bring an outcome which counters that human voice, just as the bank refused my offer. Thank God it did, because it was not the right choice. It was done by the human mind, but God got there anyway in order to catch me with it. Now I hope that this is helpful to you. And by the way, if you have questions about these kinds of things, you're very welcome to contact me through our website, thechristianladyfoundation.org, and the email address, drbob, D-R-B-O-B, at christianladyfoundation.org. Send your questions, and I'm glad to try to be able to help you with phenomenon like this. We're all in it together, and God wants us to work with each other, and it is not an imposition on me for you to question me. And if you feel the nudge by God particularly to take advantage of that, do so. We're all going home together. We all have to learn how to listen to God, how to hear God, how to follow God's instruction, and we support each other in the process. Jesus had his healing support group also. His mother, that Canaanite woman who he called a dog, but who answered him with great love and kindness and said, even the dogs get crumbs off the children's table. And he said, go home, your daughter's healed. That was his support group. She so loved him that she didn't put the knock on him. And he now knew he was here in this world to heal anybody and everybody, just not Israel itself. So you have it within you to be able to catch, and God will help you to catch the phony claims of the human mind as they try to make believe that they're God. Hope this is helpful to you. Bye-bye for now.